Welcome to the Forum's first Women's Day program, LeadHership, and happy International Women's Day to all the amazing, passionate, and dedicated women and leaders who are working, leading, and campaigning to make our world better, greener, and fairer. Today, we're here with TITI Soentoro from Aksi. So thank you so much for taking the time to sit here with us and talk about your work in international development and gender. So our topic today is going to be on gender mainstreaming and the efficacy of safeguards policy, particularly the operational plans and how do they protect or empower women. But before we get into all those technical details, TITI, can you tell us a bit about your work and yourself?
I'm active in the women's movements more than 3 decades. So since student time, I already involved in the women's discussions groups, discussions about women's rights in Indonesia and so on. So I continue when I'm back home, continue with working together with other groups to do a political education for workers. It was fun, you know. I really like that. And then when I'm back from my work in Thailand as the regional coordinator of APWLD, that's a women's organization, I moved to Manila to do the NGO Forum on ADB, where I'm responsible for the policy advocacy. And then, yes, that time, we are work on the safeguard policy updates. And then back to Indonesia with other feminists, we set up Aksi. And then particularly, we monitor the climate and development projects and working to empower women so they can speak out on behalf of themselves about their rights, about their experience, about their problem or issue related to projects coming to their life. I think that's the brief overview about myself. And I live in a small village in central Java, not that far from the ancient temple of Borobudur.
You've been an activist and an educator for, such a long time. What do you do then to kind of relax from activism? What are some of your hobbies when you're not busy being an activist and a great one at it as well?
I do yoga, vipassana, meditation. I play with my dogs, going out with my sister to mountains, buying plants. I have a lot of plants. And eating.
So TITI, what really sort of drove you to work in the feminist or the women's movement? What sparked your interest in that field?
I woke up and liked the things, but it's like a process where I'm learning about the women's situation. Then when I'm back to Indonesia during late 80s, then there was a problems of forced eviction to the community in Central Java for a big dam financed by the World Bank. So then started with that to hear the issues of women. It's really hurting to hear that people are forced displaced, they lost their livelihood, and then other situations like land grabbing, and so there's a lot of things that build up the awareness, to see the situations, the problems they experience. So it's built up in the process. Then I joined the women's groups, Solidaritas Perempuan, then to work with the community. So it's just a long process.
I mean, I totally relate with that. It's definitely not something that you wake up and you decide to do.
Yes.
Joining the women's movement, especially. So TITI, I just want to, and thank you so much as well for taking the time to introduce yourself to us and everyone who's tuning in. So I want to sort of shift the discussion now to gender mainstreaming. Gender mainstreaming has been such a buzzword in development and development projects, be it from the World Bank, the ADB, all of them. They're using it in loan financing. For those of us who don't know what gender mainstreaming is, can you tell us briefly, what does gender mainstreaming mean to you?
Means that country governments has to implement the gender mainstreaming into their policies, program, action, and also ensure that international public or private institutions or private sectors that work in that country, they have also to do gender mainstreaming, because considering the gender disparity of the society, any plan, then it will help to push for gender equality and get rid of gender injustices.
Yep. And how, you spoke about a definition, an official definition of gender mainstreaming, and that has been instituted in a lot of the official documents used by the bank. But in your opinion, how applicable is, first of all, the definition of gender mainstreaming to the global South? And second of all, how effective do you think it has been in the global South?
If you look at the policy level, look at the policy framework, look at the political level, many countries in the global South is actually accepted the gender mainstreaming policy as agreed by the UN, because somehow it's like decorations that I have this international negotiations ratified this and this, So like Indonesia also have a gender mainstreaming policy through the presidential decree that all development activities at all levels in the country should be gender. But stays theoretical level, it stays at the conceptual level, because to apply it, it seems that a lot of work still to be done. The main problem is actually the existing patriarchy structures that hinder the implementation of the gender mainstreaming. And gender mainstreaming, because it's a state policy that have to be introduced to all level of governance, then it becomes like a tick box, it is like an administrative requirement. We are doing already gender mainstreaming, but it's really to implement at the practical level difficult. And it is also in the contrast with other state policies. Like for examples, in Indonesia, on one hand, there is a gender mainstreaming policy, but on the other hand, there is a marital law from the 1974 saying that women is not the head, man is the head of the household. Meanwhile, women is the supporters. So it means if gender mainstreaming requests that women is in the consultation, the marital law said women is not the head of the household somehow, because man is the head of the household. So it means the contradiction is there, and then the governments just let it like that. Yeah, so I mean, the application is difficult. We see that still in the projects, in the policy, women are still not informed in the decision-making process. But at the activity levels in the city, for example, they say women are involved. So women are involved when all the program is already there. So they just do the planting, they just do the cleaning, or they just do the waste program. But to design a policy, to design a program, women are still not there. You know, the gender mainstreaming policy was introduced in 1974. It's how many? It's almost 30 years, you know. It's still difficult to apply. Yeah, I think that's still a lot of work to be done.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
gender mainstreaming is not only about gender mainstreaming itself, but you need to deal with the patriarchy construction in the society. And I think other uh, raising hinderness to the gender mainstreaming policy is actually the raising of religious fundamentalism and intolerance.
Yeah, exactly. So, Titi, do you think it is then the development bank's responsibility to try and, I guess, eliminate those forms of patriarchy in society, and especially in the global south? Or do you think this is the role that should be played by civil society?
So I mean the international institution, the international financial institution also, they also include gender mainstreaming in their policy. We need to acknowledge, because like the World Bank, they have a gender and development policy, the ADB has a gender and development policy, or although it's already outdated since 1990, no, 1906. So it's really outdated. I don't know why they don't review it yet. But still the same as the experience of the governments, it is still at the level of uh, aspiration, you know, but not at the level where they implement it thoroughly. So if we look at the experience of the Safeguard Policy Statement 1995, that's the same. The SPS contain good gender considerations, you know, in the consultation, in the risk assessment, in the accountability processes, and so on. But the question is why many projects are still failed to do the gender risk assessment, still failed consulting the women, still failed in giving women information and ask for their opinion. So it means there is a problem then. The structural problem with the ADB is actually they don't what call it? They don't elaborate the gender consideration of the SPS into the operation manual. So it means the management do not know how to do gender risk assessment because there is no manual, no guidance how to do that. So it means the gender mainstreaming sadly stays at the concept level, but not really implement as it should be, like the definition. You know, there should be gender analysis, there should be women's experience and included, and so on. That's the situation. So it's still a lot of work, long way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So Titi, I'm not sure whether you are aware, but the ADB as well announced last year that they would like to modernize their safeguards policy. You've mentioned a lot about, how the gender mentioning remains aspirational in the current safeguards policy. What do you think are some of the key lessons that the ADB should keep in mind, for example, when they start looking at gender mainstreaming in the future, and or any sort of stipulation that is related to gender and women?
Yeah. So what is the modernizing of SPS mean? So it means the safeguard review team must explain to us what is actually their mean with modernized, which part will be modernized, which part is already outdated. I don't believe that everything of the SPS is already outdated. What is the measure by saying this is still relevant that is already outdated? Because like, I don't agree, for example, if they say, if they also means modernizing the gender considerations in the SPS, what they want to modernize. They don't even make an attempt to elaborate the gender consideration of how to do gender risk assessment. You know, they don't know how to do it, and how can they say it's already outdated? You know, so it's really need to be clarified what they means with that. For me, the gender provision in the SPS is still relevant. You know, it is still relevant to do gender risk assessment to all projects that come into the lives of the communities. It's still relevant to disclose informations to the affected community, to the women, about the projects that will come to their lives. It is still relevant that grievance mechanism should be gender sensitive and responsive. There is still a lot of things relevant in my opinion. So therefore, the meaning of modernizing the SPS should be really put on the table and discussed and debate. It's not like one-sided claim we want to modernize it. You know, I think we, as an NGO forum, we really need to do that, asking for the clarification.
A really good point, actually, TT. I don't think something we have all considered. You know, the
Yeah.
kind of, what does modernization really mean? I mean, because the only definition we've got from the ADB team itself is that they're looking at harmonizing with the rest of the, you know, multilateral development banks, or looking at streamlining the policy to make it more effective and efficient. But what does that actually mean is still a big question that we need to answer moving forward. So TT, just sort of before we end our discussion on development, I just wanted to get your opinion on how can we, so we talked about gender mainstreaming, but you know, is gender mainstreaming really the most effective way to ensure that women have equal rights? And how can we ensure really that women are no longer left behind, specifically in the development process?
So I think we need to do like what we are doing right now, just continue the work. Gender mainstreaming still need to be done. In the sense of, if we look at the, talk at the projects level, in the sense that it should be interpreted as a measure to protect women from project impact and risk. And on the other hand, to bring co-benefit for women. It's actually already there, but the implementation is a problem. So what we need to be done is actually continue our work by educating not only the grassroots affected people, communities, and women, but also continue educating the government, continue educating the banks that gender mainstreaming in the sense to provide protection for women from impact and risk of a project, and also to bring benefit for women is still important and need to be continued done. I think that's that's not a new work. We don't. We need to just continue that what we already done until now.
Great advice. And I'm definitely going to be continuing the work alongside you and the other great women that are in this space. So just before we
Yeah.
end today's episode, what advice can you give? Today's International Women's Day, and the attention is on women and on young girls. What advice can you give those women and young girls who really want to make a difference in the world but don't know how?
So it means we need to educate ourselves so we can speak on behalf ourselves about our situations, our challenges, and our future. Our future is in our hands, women and girls.
I love that. I love that line. The future is in our hands, women and girls. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Titi. I honestly
Oh,
can't thank you enough for making the time to sit here with us and talk about your amazing experience and the work that you've done. So thank you again. As Titi said, gender mainstreaming is not a new concept, but its application remains aspirational at best in the development process. So, what can we do to change that? We would love to hear how you are changing that. So, make sure to leave a comment telling us what you're doing to celebrate and empower the women around you. Happy International Women's Day to all, and don't forget that tomorrow we have another episode of LeadHership Women and Their Advocacy. So, make sure to tune in. See you tomorrow. Bye.